From the same prestigious institution responsible for developing groundbreaking radar technology, a completely unexpected academic course emerged, capturing the attention of people all across the United States. Designated as CMS 997, the class was officially titled Topics in Comparative Media. But its central focus was something far from traditional academia: the world of American professional wrestling. One of the key figures examined within this highly exclusive intellectual environment was a towering 7-foot-tall man from France who, ironically, had never even completed his high school education. This was an individual who reportedly ingested over 7,000 calories daily from alcoholic beverages alone. A man whose own incredible physique was tragically waging a slow, relentless war against him from the inside. His birth name was André-René Roussimoff, but to millions of fans around the globe, he was simply and unforgettably Andre the Giant. So what could possibly compel one of the most respected and forward-thinking universities in the world to allocate serious academic resources to the study of a professional wrestler? The explanation for this unlikely pairing uncovers a deep and compelling truth about our perception of culture, the nature of performance, and the fundamental narratives we construct about the human condition. This is the incredible story behind the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's academic fascination with Andre the Giant. To truly grasp how a figure like Andre could become a subject of study at MIT, our journey must begin decades earlier, in the France of the 1950s. It was in 1954 that a philosopher by the name of Roland Barthes penned an essay destined for his 1957 collection, Mythologies, a piece that would prove to be revolutionary. This single piece of writing would fundamentally and permanently alter the way intellectuals perceived the world of professional wrestling. The essay was titled The World of Wrestling. Observing matches in the intimate, small-scale venues of Paris, Barthes perceived something that mainstream society completely overlooked. He understood that professional wrestling wasn't even trying to be a genuine sport. Instead, he argued, it was pure spectacle. And the purpose of a spectacle is entirely distinct from that of an athletic competition. In any traditional sport, the final outcome is everything. The core questions are always, who will win and who will lose? All the drama is born from that fundamental uncertainty. However, in the world of wrestling, Barthes noted, the primary role of the performer isn't to achieve victory. It is to perfectly execute the series of actions and gestures that the audience anticipates. A wrestler's true job isn't about winning or losing. It is, at its heart, about delivering a compelling performance. Back in 1957, this was an absolutely radical perspective. At the time, wrestling was widely dismissed as low culture, a crude amusement for the uneducated working class. But Barthes viewed it through a completely different lens. He drew parallels between the wrestlers and the grand characters of Greek tragedy, comparing the wrestling ring itself to the hallowed stages of ancient times. As Barthes elegantly wrote, the very body of the wrestler serves as the genesis of his entire character. Much like the stock characters of Commedia dell'arte, a wrestler's physical appearance is an infallible indicator of the role he will play and the actions he will take. To put it simply, the moment you lay eyes on a wrestler, you can instantly tell if he's the hero or the villain. His physique broadcasts the entire narrative long before the first blow is ever struck. This groundbreaking essay would go on to become a cornerstone of cultural studies. It effectively gave permission to academics to analyze wrestling with genuine intellectual rigor, not as a sport, but as a rich form of cultural performance, a kind of living, breathing mythology. And arguably, no wrestler in the entire history of the medium embodied that sense of living mythology more perfectly than Andre the Giant. Andre Roussimoff entered the world on May 19, 1946, in Coulommiers, France, and spent his childhood in the quiet rural town of Moulins, located roughly 40 miles to the east of Paris. He was a beautiful baby. He was normal. Those poignant words came from his brother, Antoine, painting a picture of Andre's life just before a profound and irreversible transformation began. Then, around the age of 15, Andre started to grow. And he just kept growing and growing in a way that was both astonishing and alarming. He suffered from a condition known as acromegaly, which was triggered by a tumor on his pituitary gland, causing it to flood his body with an overwhelming excess of growth hormone. This is critically different from gigantism, which begins in childhood. Acromegaly's effects persist relentlessly, continuing to alter the body well into a person's adult years. His bones never stopped thickening. His internal organs were constantly enlarging, and his own body slowly and cruelly transformed into a kind of prison from which there was no escape. By the time he reached adulthood, Andre's true height was a matter of some debate, estimated to be somewhere between 6'9" and an incredible 7'2". For the sake of spectacle, his wrestling promoters built him at an even more imposing 7'4". And at his peak, his weight exceeded 500 pounds. His feet required a size 22 shoe. And when he held a standard 12-ounce beer can, it appeared comically tiny, like an accessory from a child's dollhouse. At just 14 years old, Andre left formal education behind to work on the family farm. While his immense size made him a tremendous asset for manual labor, that same physical trait made navigating everyday life an impossible challenge. As he once poignantly stated, "They do not build anything for a giant." Andre recounted how he was forced to use a pencil to dial a rotary telephone, simply because his powerful fingers were too large to fit into the dial's holes. Travel was a constant source of humiliation. He was physically unable to fit inside an airplane lavatory, often having to resort to using a bucket in the aisle, unless he could arrange for transport in a custom-modified vehicle. Even driving a car involved hours of agony, forcing his massive frame to contort into a space never intended for a man of his proportions. This was the painful, hidden reality behind the public spectacle. This was the vulnerable human being who lived inside the larger-than-life myth. Andre embarked on his wrestling journey in Europe during the late 1960s, adopting various personas such as Géant Ferré in his native France and the intimidating Monster Roussimoff while performing in Japan. It was in the rings of Europe and Japan that he truly refined his in-ring persona. His career trajectory shifted dramatically, however, after he signed with Japan's International Wrestling Enterprises. At the time, this was the second largest and most prominent wrestling promotion in the entire country. Their primary competitor, the Japan Pro Wrestling Alliance, had a significant advantage. They had exclusive access to the biggest and most popular American wrestling stars. Consequently, the president of International Wrestling Enterprises, Isao Yoshihara, adopted a different strategy. He began scouting across Europe, searching for unique foreign talent to bring to Japan. His international tours as the formidable Monster Roussimoff were an absolutely crucial career move for Andre, acting as the catalyst that first brought him to the attention of the Western wrestling world. Upon his initial arrival in North America, Andre's linguistic repertoire was exclusively French, presenting an immediate communication barrier. Logically, his first port of call was Montreal, a Canadian hub where French-speaking promoters could effectively communicate and strategize with him. There, he competed under the ring name Jean Fer, a moniker derived from a mythological figure in French-Canadian folklore, reminiscent of the legendary Paul Bunyan. Montreal swiftly became his inaugural North American headquarters. A fortunate turn of events, as the city was in the throes of an unprecedented professional wrestling boom. It was within this electrifying Montreal atmosphere that the foundational elements of the persona Andre would embody for the vast majority of his career were carefully developed. The character he perfected in Quebec would become his enduring identity, accompanying him on his travels across the world for many years. However, his complete metamorphosis from a notable wrestler into a global phenomenon truly began when he met Vince McMahon Sr., the influential promoter of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. This pivotal encounter was the launching point for Andre's international stardom. McMahon Sr. possessed a rare and essential insight into what made Andre a once-in-a-generation talent. He astutely realized that the conventional wrestling territory system, which involved wrestlers staying in one area to build protracted storylines, would be completely ineffective for an attraction as singular as Andre. McMahon understood that the initial shock and awe of seeing Andre would inevitably diminish with repeated exposure. You simply cannot maintain a sense of wonder for something you witness every single week. The primary challenge, which Montreal's promoters had already discovered, was how to preserve his novelty. Devising fresh and believable scenarios for a literal giant within the constraints of a full-time territorial promotion proved exceptionally difficult. The ingenious solution was to rebrand Andre entirely, presenting him as a special, must-see traveling attraction. This nomadic strategy ensured that the spectacle never grew old, prompting McMahon to develop an unprecedented and revolutionary booking approach for his star. Andre was kept in constant motion, making limited appearances in countless territories across North America and eventually the world, staying only long enough to guarantee sold-out arenas before moving on to the next location. In that era, this was a completely groundbreaking and transformative promotional strategy that rewrote the rules. At the time Andre journeyed over from Europe, the North American wrestling scene was fragmented into as many as 32 different territories. He would typically spend just under 2 months performing in each distinct region before relocating. And this network of 32 territories provided a constant supply of new audiences to dazzle. In the 2018 HBO documentary, fellow wrestler Jerry Lawler noted that there was absolutely no one else in the business at that time who carried that kind of weight. Lawler explained, "You could simply say, 'Let me put this guy on your card,' and it would immediately guarantee a sold-out event. No other performer could command that level of automatic interest, and his appearances were typically orchestrated in one of a few highly effective ways. Often he was booked as a premier special attraction to significantly boost attendance for a major event, like the famous Stampede Week in Calgary, or the Superdome Spectacular held in New Orleans. In another common scenario, he would be brought in as the ultimate equalizer, the secret weapon tag team partner for the top local hero who was facing overwhelming odds against a group of villains. Furthermore, if a promotion was staging a battle royale, the single biggest gimmick match of the period, Andre's inclusion was considered essential, billed as the colossal super heavyweight that fans paid to see. His function was to be that special attraction, and securing his presence required promoters to guarantee Andre a substantial payday, in addition to paying McMahon's hefty booking fee. This unique business model established Andre as one of the very few wrestlers with the autonomy to work across all territories, while still being officially affiliated with the WWE. That booking fee was a key part of the deal, and his financial success was so profound that in 1974, the Guinness Book of World Records listed Andre as the highest-paid wrestler globally, with a reported annual income of $400,000. In today's money, that salary would be equivalent to roughly $2 million, a figure that powerfully illustrates his unparalleled market value. But McMahon's role extended far beyond managing Andre's travel itinerary. He was the chief architect of the Andre the Giant mythology. McMahon actively discouraged Andre from using athletic moves like drop kicks, even though Andre was quite capable of them early on, because he wanted to portray Andre as an immense, unstoppable monster who was something beyond human. McMahon christened him Andre the Giant and marketed him to the world as the eighth wonder of the world, a branding concept that perfectly reflects the theories of the philosopher Roland Barthes. As Barthes famously wrote, "The physique of the wrestler is a foundational signifier," noting that, like a seed, it contains the whole fight. Andre's body was the ultimate sign. Before he even stepped through the ropes, his sheer size communicated a primal and overwhelming power. He was presented as a force of nature, a personality larger than life, and a myth made real. a perception that was heavily bolstered by his strategic appearances on local news broadcasts. He was featured on television news programs all over the country, engaging in memorable stunts. These included shaking hands with journalists who would feign agony from his grip, lifting impossibly heavy weights of 2,000 pounds, and letting interviewers humorously try on his gargantuan clothing. Whenever a camera was pointed at him, Andre had an uncanny instinct for how to perfectly present himself to the fans and enhance his legend. This calculated media strategy was a key factor that helped Andre become one of the first professional wrestlers to achieve widespread national and international celebrity as word of his existence spread. In a remarkably short time, the traveling attraction from France became a household name known across the globe. By the spring of 2007, Andre the Giant's legacy had become so significant that it appeared in the MIT curriculum, with an analysis of his career spanning pages 66 through 81 of a text on the top 100 pro wrestlers of all time. But he was not the only athlete under academic review. The university course provided a comprehensive history of the entire sport of professional wrestling, viewed through the lens of its most iconic performers. For instance, students studied Bret Hart, examining the technical brilliance that earned him the well-deserved nickname, the excellence of execution. Shawn Michaels' career was analyzed as a representation of the shift towards a more athletic, high-flying in-ring style that dominated the 1990s. An extensive section was, of course, dedicated to Ric Flair, who is considered by a great many to be the greatest professional wrestler of all time. Flair's complete mastery of ring psychology and his uncanny ability to make his opponents look like legitimate threats while still emerging victorious represented a style of greatness that was fundamentally different from the pure, awesome spectacle of Andre. The course material delved deep into iconic figures like The Undertaker, dissecting the incredible behind-the-scenes strategy required to maintain a supernatural persona for multiple decades in the public eye. The curriculum then explored how Stone Cold Steve Austin single-handedly ushered in the Attitude Era, embodying a new breed of anti-hero that completely erased the line between good and evil. Following this, they examined the meteoric rise of The Rock, analyzing the magnetic charisma that allowed him to transcend the wrestling world and conquer Hollywood. Even the legendary Mick Foley, whose personal guest lecture had drawn a massive standing room-only crowd, was featured prominently within the required academic readings. The syllabus also highlighted Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit as the leading figures of a technical wrestling renaissance that swept through the industry in the early 2000s. The entire course was meticulously structured around the twin pillars of raw spectacle and technical craft, and the required viewing list was just as exhaustive and detailed. They also analyzed the intense showdown between Bob Backlund and the high-flying Jimmy Snuka, as well as the unforgettable alley fight between Pat Patterson and Sergeant Slaughter. Their studies involved breaking down the historic match between the Sheik and Bobo Brazil, alongside provocative clips from the revealing documentary titled, I Like to Hurt People. Screenings also included I'm From Hollywood and pivotal excerpts from Man on the Moon, Milos Forman's celebrated film exploring Andy Kaufman's life, which itself contained lengthy, crucial wrestling scenes. Moreover, the now defunct but legendary promotions of the NWA and WCW were given a significant portion of the academic spotlight. Students meticulously analyzed legendary tag team feuds like the Rock and Roll Express against the Andersons and the Midnight Express clashing with the Road Warriors, alongside iconic singles rivalries such as Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat and Sting's battles with Big Van Vader. The course demanded they view the entire Monday Night War documentary series and closely analyze the groundbreaking work of Rey Mysterio. Specifically, his revolutionary matches against Psychosis were dissected to fully grasp the profound and lasting influence of Mexican lucha libre on the American wrestling landscape. This incredibly thorough methodology ensured that a figure like Andre the Giant wasn't just studied as an isolated spectacle, but was understood within a rich historical context. It allowed them to clearly see how his unique brand of larger-than-life spectacle stood in stark contrast to the pure technical wizardry of a Ric Flair or the breathtaking aerial acrobatics of a Rey Mysterio. This incredible breadth of study was entirely by design. The curriculum painstakingly traced the evolution of professional wrestling in chronological order, revealing how archetypal characters shifted dramatically from one decade to the next, with Andre the Giant perfectly embodying one specific era. In stark contrast, Stone Cold Steve Austin came to represent a completely different period, with each superstar serving as a mirror that reflected the unique cultural anxieties and desires of their respective audiences. However, to truly grasp why Andre the Giant commanded such a massive portion of the curriculum, one must first uncover the shocking reasons for his immense academic importance. The truth is, Andre's life and career embodied a powerful convergence of multiple complex themes that scholars are deeply fascinated with. These themes include the controversial portrayal of disability and the body, the deliberate construction of a living myth, the cold economics behind spectacle, the forgotten territorial system that predated modern wrestling, and his pivotal role in the industry's shift from a regional curiosity to a national obsession. When viewed through the critical lens of disability studies, Andre's story transforms into a tragic case study of how our culture exploits exceptional bodies. The very condition that defined him, acromegaly, was at once the source of his worldwide fame and the crushing weight of his greatest personal burden. It's a shocking paradox. Without this debilitating medical condition, he would never have risen to become a global wrestling superstar. Yet, because of it, he was tragically condemned to a premature death, a grim reality that Andre himself was fully aware would ultimately claim his life. Doctors presented him with treatment options that could have potentially prolonged his life, but this came with a terrible catch. The treatment risked altering his famous physique and could have abruptly ended his lucrative career in the ring. In the end, Andre made a fateful choice. He consciously chose the spectacle, the fame, and the glory over the promise of a longer life. As the very disease that had gifted him his unbelievable size began to relentlessly ravage his body, Andre was forced to endure constant, near-crippling agony. His back began to deteriorate, and his joints completely failed him. By 1986, the situation had grown so dire that his opponents in the ring had to be incredibly gentle, as any misstep could cause him a catastrophic injury. And yet, unbelievably, he continued to perform. It is at this tragic point that the academic analysis becomes truly profound. Andre the Giant was no longer just a wrestler. He had become a living, breathing text, one that could be read and interpreted on multiple levels. His own body was telling a heartbreaking story about immense sacrifice, the devastating price of fame, and the dark reality of what occurs when a human being is transformed into a commercial product. One of the single most influential academic essays ever published on wrestling studies is a piece titled "Never Trust a Snake" by the scholar Henry Jenkins, which carries the revealing subtitle "Wrestling as Masculine Melodrama." In his work, Jenkins, a highly respected media scholar, boldly argued that professional wrestling fulfills a very specific and crucial cultural function, particularly for its working-class male viewership. He proposed that it provides a sanctioned outlet for powerful emotional expression in a society that systematically discourages men from openly displaying their feelings. The groundbreaking essay carefully examines how the world of wrestling constructs these incredibly well-defined moral universes where the lines between good and evil are drawn in absolute, unmistakable terms. In stark contrast to the complexities of real life, where dishonest people often succeed and true justice is seldom served, wrestling makes a solemn promise to its audience. The villain will, in the end, receive their comeuppance. Working-class men, as Jenkins argued, can deeply and personally relate to the wrestlers because the audience itself is predominantly composed of working-class individuals. In essence, wrestling provides a fantasy narrative where the common man, the proletariat, can vicariously experience a triumphant victory over the oppressive upper class. But Andre the Giant's story complicated this neat academic framework in truly fascinating and unexpected ways. For the vast majority of his celebrated career, Andre was adored as a classic babyface, an undisputed hero to millions. His incredible size paradoxically cast him as the ultimate underdog who became a champion. Here was a man who, by all the conventional rules of biology, simply should not have existed. And yet, he utterly dominated every single opponent who dared to step into the ring with him. But then, in the shocking year of 1987, Andre did the unthinkable. He turned heel. He shockingly aligned himself with the despised manager Bobby the Brain Heenan and publicly challenged his supposed friend, Hulk Hogan, betraying years of unwavering fan devotion in a single act. This stunning betrayal stands as one of the most significant moments in the annals of wrestling history, precisely because it maliciously weaponized every single attribute that the fans had once cherished about Andre. His awe-inspiring size, once a source of comfort and reassurance to his fans, was suddenly transformed into something deeply menacing. His famously gentle demeanor was exposed as nothing more than a carefully constructed mask concealing a ruthless and cold-hearted ambition. From an academic standpoint, this shocking turn of events represented what scholars refer to as a complete narrative rupture. The story being told by Andre's physical presence, the text of his body, now communicated a message that was entirely, chillingly different. The very same physical traits that had once signified a hero were now interpreted as the unmistakable signs of a monster. And the strategy paid off spectacularly. In a stunning reversal of public opinion, Pro Wrestling Illustrated named Andre the most despised wrestler of 1988, a stark contrast to when they had crowned him the most beloved wrestler back in 1977 and again in 1982. However, any serious examination of Andre the Giant's legacy is simply incomplete without a deep dive into the spectacle of WrestleMania 3. On the historic date of March 29, 1987, the WWE's official attendance figure was a staggering 93,000 fans, all packed into the Pontiac Silverdome to witness Andre challenge Hulk Hogan for the WWE Championship. Although subsequent investigations and analyses have indicated that the real attendance number was likely closer to a still massive 78,000. Beyond the stadium, an even larger audience of millions was captivated, watching the event unfold on pay-per-view. The promotional lead-up to WrestleMania 3 was nothing short of a masterclass in storytelling. For many years, Andre had stood by Hogan's side as a trusted friend and a powerful ally. This all changed during a pivotal episode of Piper's Pit, where Hulk Hogan found himself face-to-face with the notorious manager, Bobby Heenan. In a shocking turn, Heenan declared that his new protege was none other than Andre the Giant. Following this reveal, Andre issued a direct challenge to Hogan for a championship match at WrestleMania 3, punctuating the moment by violently tearing the t-shirt and the gold crucifix from Hogan's body, an image that has become one of the most indelible in wrestling television history. From a narrative perspective, this dramatic confrontation was deeply symbolic, representing a classic passing of the torch moment. Andre had undisputedly been the sport's most dominant figure throughout the 1970s. Meanwhile, Hogan had unequivocally risen to become the face of wrestling in the 1980s. Their monumental clash was a perfect metaphor for this generational shift. From a purely commercial standpoint, the event was a powerful demonstration of professional wrestling's immense potential as a grand spectacle. This landmark event completely shattered previous indoor attendance records. More importantly, it served as definitive proof that wrestling could stand shoulder to shoulder with mainstream sports and entertainment. Looking at it through an academic lens, the match served as a perfect, real-world example of the concepts that French theorist Roland Barthes had articulated nearly 3 decades prior. Barthes famously wrote that each sign in wrestling is endowed with an absolute clarity. He argued that within its world, one must always understand everything on the spot. Therefore, when Hulk Hogan executed the body slam on Andre, a feat that had been relentlessly promoted as an impossible act, the symbolism was instantly and universally understood. The message was crystal clear. The old guard had been overthrown, and a new champion had ascended to claim the throne. A sense of justice was delivered to the audience. The fact that Hogan had, in reality, successfully slammed Andre on several previous occasions in lesser-known matches that flew under the radar of most fans was completely irrelevant to the moment. For instance, a villainous Hogan had managed to slam a heroic Andre after their bout at the Showdown at Shea on August 9, 1980. A time when Andre was considerably lighter at around 470 pounds and possessed greater athletic ability. Furthermore, Andre had permitted other legendary wrestlers like Harley Race, El Canic, and Stan Hansen to slam him in different wrestling territories. But the fragmented nature of the old territorial system ensured these moments remained isolated, local events. By the time WrestleMania 3 arrived, the WWE's expansion had made it a national powerhouse, which provided the event with an audience of a scale that had never been seen before. This distinction is incredibly important when viewed from a media studies perspective. It illustrates how the exact same physical action can carry entirely different meanings based on its surrounding context. When Hogan slammed Andre within the confines of a regional territory, it was merely a local story for a limited audience. But when Hogan slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3, it was the birth of a national myth, unfolding in real time. The academic fascination with Andre, however, certainly extended far beyond a single media theory course. Renowned journalist Dave Meltzer, whose Wrestling Observer newsletter was considered essential reading in those circles, wrote extensively about Andre in his acclaimed tribute books. Today, these collections of obituaries are widely regarded as foundational and essential texts for anyone studying the history of professional wrestling. Meltzer was meticulous in his research, documenting Andre's true height by citing a 1974 measurement listing him at 6 feet 9 3/4 inches, thereby debunking the promotional billing of an exaggerated 7 feet 4 inches. He also chronicled Andre's extensive international career that preceded his widespread fame in the WWE. Meltzer also described the delicate situation by 1986, where Andre's opponents had to be exceptionally gentle with him due to his body's increasing fragility. In 2014, the artist known as Box Brown published Andre the Giant, Life and Legend, a compelling graphic novel that resonated with a wide audience and ultimately became a New York Times bestseller. This acclaimed book went on to significantly influence later documentary projects, most notably the 2018 HBO documentary, which was also titled Andre the Giant. What made the HBO documentary so effective was its ability to apply complex academic frameworks to Andre's story, but in a way that avoided using dense, scholarly language. It analyzed Andre's life through the critical lens of disability, thoroughly exploring how his acromegaly profoundly shaped both the unique opportunities he was given and the severe limitations he faced. Arguably, the most academically compelling aspect of Andre's legacy is what his story reveals about the broader representation of disability in popular culture. This has been a subject of keen analysis, for example, in research from the University of Massachusetts, Boston, which examined Andre through disability studies. Drawing upon Irving Goffman's seminal work, Stigma, Notes on the Management of Spoiled Identity. This particular analysis posited that Andre's life story is often at risk of being oversimplified into a feel-good triumph over adversity narrative. a simplification that dangerously overlooks more significant systemic issues. The professional wrestling industry has a long history of exploiting individuals who possess unique and often extreme physical characteristics. In Andre's case, his medical condition made him an incredibly valuable attraction, a living spectacle, while at the very same time, it was tragically and systematically destroying his physical health. This fundamental conflict creates a profound ethical tension, a complex issue that scholars and critics continue to debate and dissect to this day. Did the world of wrestling provide Andre with extraordinary opportunities he would have been denied otherwise? Or did the industry simply consume him, exploiting his exceptional body for profit until there was nothing left? The complicated and perhaps unsettling answer is that both of these realities can be true at the same time. After all, Andre made the conscious choice to enter the world of wrestling. He actively refused medical interventions that had the potential to save his life, largely because undergoing such treatments would have almost certainly meant the end of his career. Within that world, he discovered community, purpose, and international fame in a society that offered very few viable alternatives for a person of his immense stature. Yet, that same industry demanded he perform while enduring constant, agonizing pain. It placed upon him the immense pressure of maintaining his larger-than-life, mythological status, even as his physical body was progressively breaking down and deteriorating. It is precisely this deep, unresolved tension between opportunity and exploitation that continues to make the life and legend of Andre the Giant such an endlessly fascinating subject for academic study. His life wasn't just one simple story. It was a complex text with countless interpretations, where each perspective held its own validity. Yet none could ever tell the complete tale. When the legendary Mick Foley delivered a speech at MIT, the very title of his lecture managed to perfectly encapsulate the essential core of academic wrestling studies. The notion that the real world is more fake than wrestling sounds like a punchline, but it harbors a profound truth that scholars have spent years meticulously exploring. Professional wrestling openly admits that it's a performance art. It doesn't try to pass itself off as a legitimate athletic competition, and the outcomes are known to be predetermined. The intense rivalries are meticulously scripted, a secret that absolutely everyone is in on. Despite this, viewers allow themselves to become completely engaged, cheering wildly for the heroes. They rain down boos upon the villains, investing themselves emotionally in storylines they are fully aware have been fabricated. It's a fascinating contrast to many of our supposedly authentic institutions. Consider political debates, which often feel much more like choreographed theatrical performances than genuine exchanges of ideas. Think of reality television, which is profoundly manipulated through scripting and selective editing, or news coverage that often prioritizes sensational entertainment over delivering factual information. And then there are the carefully constructed social media personas that present a flawless image, bearing almost no resemblance to the complexities of people's actual lives. Wrestling is refreshingly honest about its own artificial nature, and in doing so, it highlights that much of what we accept as real is not. This single insight has massive implications for the field of media studies. Fans of professional wrestling are not naive individuals who are incapable of distinguishing between what is fiction and what is reality. To the contrary, they are remarkably sophisticated consumers of media who make a very conscious decision to participate in and engage with a constructed narrative. The philosopher Roland Barthes understood this dynamic back in 1957. He observed that what the public truly craves is the grand image of passion, rather than passion itself. Therefore, wrestling has no more of a truth problem than the theater does. This was a concept Andre the Giant himself also deeply understood. His entire legendary career was built upon the fascinating space between reality and performance. For example, he wasn't actually 7 feet 4 inches tall. He didn't actually go undefeated for 15 years. And he was, of course, not literally a superhuman being. But his portrayal of superhumanity was so utterly effective and believable that the factual truth became almost entirely irrelevant. The myth he embodied became far more powerful than the man. The materials from that groundbreaking MIT course are still accessible through the university's open courseware program, which permits anyone from anywhere in the world to view the syllabus, reading lists, and assignments. Several of the students' term papers were even published, including pieces titled Professional Wrestling, the Ultimate Storytelling Device, and Wrestling with Body Discourse. Sam Ford would later co-author the 2013 book Spreadable Media, Creating Value and Meaning in a Networked Culture, a work that built upon concepts developed partly through these wrestling studies. This unique course effectively proved that subjects often dismissed as lowbrow can produce profound academic insights when they are approached with genuine intellectual rigor. The field of wrestling studies has significantly broadened since then, with numerous scholars publishing peer-reviewed articles in respected journals of cultural studies, communication, and sociology. The MIT course was not an isolated phenomenon. In fact, academic wrestling studies had been steadily developing for many decades, and Andre's career was a constant feature throughout this scholarship. Harvard Business School published an official case study on WWE, and Purdue University published a peer-reviewed academic paper analyzing the infamous Montreal Screwjob. That was the notorious 1997 incident that involved Bret Hart and Vince McMahon, an event that completely dissolved the line between wrestling's fiction and genuine corporate politics. The University of Florida produced an entire doctoral dissertation in anthropology which examined wrestling as a symbolic reenactment of the struggles faced by its audience. The academic who conducted that research was later hired by WWE specifically because of his dissertation, which clearly demonstrates how seriously the industry itself regarded academic study. Wake Forest University was responsible for a master's thesis that was even featured on the MIT syllabus, titled Wrestling with Reality, Hyper-Reality Examined in the World Wrestling Federation. The thesis was heavily influenced by the philosopher Jean Baudrillard's concept of hyper-reality, which posits that simulations of reality can eventually become more real than reality itself. This idea applied perfectly to Andre. His promoted height of 7 feet and 4 inches was far more real to the viewing audience than his actual height, which was closer to 6 feet and 10 inches. His fabricated 15-year undefeated streak felt more real than the actual losses he took in various regional promotions. The hyper-real Andre had completely eclipsed the real Andre. Taken together, all of this scholarship proved that wrestling studies was not merely a joke or a fleeting fad. It had established itself as a legitimate academic field that was producing peer-reviewed research at universities across the nation and around the globe. Andre the Giant continues to be a central figure in this scholarship. His long career offers a perfect case study for nearly every major theme that wrestling academics choose to explore. These themes range from the construction of modern mythology and the politics of the human body, to the economics of spectacle and the transformation of a regional entertainment into a global phenomenon. Andre the Giant passed away on January 28, 1993, in Paris, France. He was only 46 years old. The official cause of death was congestive heart failure, which was directly linked to his untreated acromegaly. His heart, tragically enlarged by the very same condition that made him famous, simply could no longer pump blood sufficiently through his massive body. He had made the trip to France to attend his father's funeral. His final wish was for cremation, but no crematorium in the entire country was large enough to accommodate his frame. Because of this, his remains had to be flown all the way back to the United States. His ashes reportedly weighed more than 17 pounds, and they were eventually scattered at his personal ranch in North Carolina. Andre was rightfully the very first inductee into the WWE Hall of Fame, starting a prestigious tradition that continues strong to this day. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal is now a yearly tradition at every WrestleMania. However, his academic legacy is just as significant as these institutional honors. Andre the Giant conclusively demonstrated that professional wrestling was a subject that could be, and should be, studied with serious academic intent. His incredible career showed exactly how popular culture is capable of creating and sustaining powerful, modern mythologies. His very body became a living text that scholars continue to analyze, constantly finding new layers of meaning in the amazing spectacle that was the eighth wonder of the world. Long before the modern era of superstars, wrestling historian David Shoemaker noted in an HBO documentary that there was truly only one Titan, Andre the Giant. And well before wrestling became a topic of serious academic inquiry, the philosopher Roland Barthes was observing French wrestlers, discovering something deeply profound within their theatrical displays. In the time that passed between Barthes' insights and a groundbreaking course at MIT, Andre the Giant evolved into something far more significant than just a performer in the ring. He transformed into a figure deserving of meticulous study at one of the world's most prestigious universities. The MIT course dedicated to wrestling wasn't actually about the sport itself. Its real focus was on how cultures build systems of meaning through performance. It examined how human bodies convey messages long before any words are exchanged, and explored how technological shifts alter the very stories we tell and the ways we present them. For this academic exploration, wrestling served as the ideal case study, and Andre was its ultimate and most compelling example. When the students delved into the specifics of Andre's career, they were, in fact, learning how to decode complex cultural texts. As they analyzed his infamous turn as a heel, they were dissecting how abrupt narrative shifts can generate powerful new meanings. When the conversation turned to his ailing body, they were forced to confront difficult questions surrounding disability, the ethics of exploitation, and the true, often painful, cost of fame. I never felt any real compulsion to defend the class or explain its purpose to anyone, wrote graduate student Kate James, adding, "Its value was entirely self-evident to those who were actually willing to look." Andre the Giant, of course, never once stepped inside a classroom at MIT. He passed away 14 years before the course, cataloged as CMS 9997, was ever conceived, and yet his presence was undeniably felt throughout the entire semester. His life's journey perfectly embodied every concept the class was designed to unpack. For students learning how to interpret cultural significance, Andre's physical form was the quintessential text they had to master. Andre the Giant was a man enduring constant pain who deliberately chose to become an icon. He was an ordinary human being who elevated himself into a modern myth. He was a physical presence that communicated volumes to millions of people who would never meet him. And that is why he was worthy of study at MIT. In the final analysis, gaining an understanding of Andre the Giant is to gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. It reveals truths about the legends we invent, the bodies we both idolize and take advantage of, and about the very narratives that fundamentally shape our perception of reality. That is the very reason why one of the world's premier universities analyzed a professional athlete who never even earned a high school diploma. And it is precisely why, decades after his passing, Andre the Giant continues to be a figure deserving of our most serious intellectual consideration. We should also recall the words of Mick Foley to those MIT students. The so-called real world is often more artificial than wrestling. Sometimes, the narratives that resonate with the most honesty are the very ones that openly acknowledge they are a performance.